Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program Business Point on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining us this hour. On today's edition, we'll be looking at analyzing the planned VAT, that is tax addition that the federal government is planning to add, increase from 7.5% to 10%. So we'll be analyzing the impacts of the increment on businesses. And before we get into the conversation, and I would just like to bring to your notice that I'm not alone in the studio. I have a guest with me. But before I introduce my guest, let me bring you up to speed with what the federal government has to say. Though they've argued and said it's a rumor, but from every form of rumor, there's a little bit atom of truth in it. So we're just going to be hoping that it's actually a rumor, but we are still going to analyze what the impact is going to be if this increment happens from 7.5% to 10%. The federal government has debunked claims that the plan to increase the value added tax, that is VAT, rate from 7.5% to 10%. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, disclosed this in a statement posted by the Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onunuga. Edun explained that the tax system is built on three pillars: tax policy, tax laws, and tax administration. He emphasized that these elements must function to establish a robust system that strengthens the government's fiscal position. The minister noted that the government's priority is to leverage fiscal policies to foster sustainable economic growth, reduce poverty, and create a flourishing business environment. So this is the main reason why they said the importance of this increment should be. But we want to ask questions, looking at our current, inflation rates, food inflation and the economy at large. Is this the best time? I have with me someone who would help us understand this, and his name is Johnson Olubenro. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much for joining.
Good morning, Mr. Samuel. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so looking at it now, taxation, it has been stated that we have three pillar basically of the tax, so which is the tax policy, the tax law, and tax administration. So looking at Nigerian economy, is it feasible for this should happen now, for this tax increment should happen?
Okay. Good morning, viewers at home. I think there's a whole lot of misinformation and maybe a little bit of confusion too
yes.
Regarding it. Just like the minister has said, it's a proposal.
Yes.
So we basically have a committee that is in charge of, that was set up, which we all know,
yes.
the committee in charge of fiscal policy and tax reform, which is being headed by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele.
Yes.
So this is part of their work because they have the mandate to help to reform the entire system.
Yes.
And they have come up with a proposal, and interestingly, the proposal to increase VAT from 7.5 to 10% is also one of the items on the list. And I must say that there are quite a number of other interesting things, on that list. But the one that Nigeria, prefer to just zero on is of course the proposed increase from 7.5% to 10%. So there are quite a lot of other interesting things. Maybe if time permits, we can unbundle them
yes.
and just because the same policy document. And before we get to that, the minister coming to say it's a rumor because the chairman of the committee himself, which is Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, had been on air to also provide some clarification. So I don't know where the rumor is coming from. I don't think there's any rumor here. The chairman of the committee has come to state categorically that yes, they are proposing that increment.
Yes.
And this was done on national TV. So, and these are some of the things sometimes that, result in Nigerians not trusting the system.
Okay.
Because we should all be saying the same thing. The chairman can't be saying, this is what we want to do, and then we are hearing another thing from those in government. But what is clear, what we all agree on, is that it is still a proposal. Yeah. At best, a draft document, and the document has not even been issued. So, and I think it is because of that that the minister has come to say that it's a rumor, and because the official documents are not issued, it's just a proposal, and it's still subject to the president's approval. It is until it is approved that it's not binding.
But do you think the president should go ahead and approve it? Though they've said, for this to happen, it's going to help cushion poverty and all of that. But isn't it still making the economic situation tight?
So I think it's a kind of carrot and stick approach that they want to use.
Okay.
So in fairness to the committee, because I took time to analyze the explanation that Mr. Ayodele had to give, regarding this. And in fairness to them,
yes,
they are saying that we want to remove, the poorest and the vulnerable Nigerians. We want to remove them from the tax burden, and then put it, on people who can really, the elite, the middle class, and the wealthy, people who, can really afford to pay these taxes. So what they are proposing is that, in fact, as it stands now, businesses that do 25 million and below are exempted from majority of taxes.
Okay.
So they are saying we want to take that number to 50 million.
Okay.
For instance, that we have looked at the data and we have seen that over 60%, or at least not less than 60% of small businesses, their revenue, dangle around, that number. So 60% of small businesses, according to the data that they had to work with, fall within that bracket. And they are saying that we want to relieve these people, we want to relieve people within this category from most of the major tax burdens. And they have looked at about 5 or 6 areas. They talk about transportation. These are areas where the average Nigerian get to spend most of their income.
Yes.
So they look at the aspect of transportation, they look at the aspect of health, they look at education, they also look at accommodation, and of course, food. And they are saying that we want to relieve these people from almost all the possible taxations, that will apply in these areas, so that they can now have, more of their disposable income to do more useful things. Because if you look at the average Nigerian, in fact, sometimes people spend up to 65, 70%, sometimes even 80% of their revenue on rent. And they are saying we want to relieve Nigerians from any kind of taxes, that relate to these areas. And also, they are also proposing that for individuals who earn about 1.5 million, and below in revenue, they also want to exempt them from the burden of having to pay, personal income taxes. So all of that sound exciting, but what most Nigerians are saying is that we understand and we appreciate all of that. But then, if you put the extra 2.5% on VAT, because at the end of the day, the poor person is still going to consume the products
yes,
that these other guys, because if a business has to now charge 10% VAT, so definitely that the cost at which you are going to be
procuring
those items, products and services, is also going to go up. And so one way or the other, even though they have done a very smart work by saying that, okay, we will make sure that most of the areas where the poorest of Nigerians have to spend their money, we are going to relieve them. But at the end of the day, it's still going to trickle down into some sort of increment, in the prices of goods and services, which means that the purchasing power of the average Nigerian is going to significantly reduce. Yes. However, they are saying that Nigerians will have more money to be able to afford the increment. So that's the argument. That's the argument there. And if you look at it, because you also have to look at the body language of the government. That same week when this thing was rumored,
yes,
it was that same week, I think the next day, that the price of fuel went up to, in some instances, over 1,000, depending on where you live, yes, and the filling station that you've chosen to, to purchase fuel.
Yes.
So people are saying, these policies are inconsistent. They are not speaking to themselves. So these guys can be saying, if truly you want us to believe you that indeed you really want to alleviate, the poverty of Nigerians and all of that, and relieve them from unnecessary tax obligations and all of that, then in the same week, people now have to pay more. It's been rumored forever, proposed increase in energy and all of that. In fact, energy has been revised. I don't know how many times now. You know how long your whatever lasts now when you buy,
yes,
when you buy those units now. So people are saying Not now, not when inflation is over 34%, not when food inflation is over 40%. So people are saying this might not be the best of time,
Yes.
you know, to want to introduce this policy, because the average Nigerian is thinking, okay, they don't care. In fact, when most of the news, whatever reported this, they didn't even care about all the other sweet things that they had to say. What they zeroed on was the proposed increment in VAT.
Yes, because obviously, one, the proposed increment is actually going to boil down to the current prices of
course,
commodities in the market. So let's look at that. You know, it was rumored like a week, and then the following week we saw a massive, almost 50% increment on PMS price. So now, the moment this was rumored, that same week, Dangote came out to even talk about it, given the fact that he was asking questions. How do you expect me to pay off the loan that I got to build the refinery? Talking about Dangote, still he has not been able to have his products in Nigerian markets because FEC has not given order on how much he's supposed to sell. So now my question comes to the fact that they said we have to, take it away, like exempt some persons. These persons now that have small scale business, SMEs now, definitely most of them tend to get loans to be able to start up their business and grow.
Correct.
What impact now would it have now for someone getting, a loan, let's say of, 10 million naira and having to pay, a 10% VAT on it? How would the person manage the business and, get returns and also be able to pay the loan without having to break his or her back?
Yeah, so these are issues because and the numbers are derived from the MPR. That's the monetary policy rate.
Yes.
If you look at the numbers, the last time I checked is about 26% or so. That's the current. If I'm correct, that's
26.5.
26.5%.
Yes.
That's the current MPR. And so, that means that you might be depending on the finance institution where you have approached, for that facility.
Yes.
So you could be paying maybe up to 30% or even more by the time it's getting to you. So if you're going to be doing that much, I mean, how much margin do you have? I remember elementary accounting, gross profit. In those days, we used to target at 33.1%. That's considered a good, a good gross margin.
Yes.
When you are in manufacturing or even in other sectors. So if let's even look at 33.1%.
Yes.
If I am already, if the cost of finance is already at least 30%. And you'll be amazed, sometimes you go to 40%, sometimes 45%. And don't even talk about these small businesses that have to rely on these mobile apps.
Yes.
You don't want to know, some of these mobile apps charge up to 60%. But because the people are not well informed, they give them a daily rate. So they tell them, come and access our facility at a daily rate. Many of them don't realize that the rate is a daily rate. So by the time you convert it to weekly rate, monthly rate, sometimes it goes to almost 60%. So the issues are glaring at all of us in the face. So the cost of finance is very, very high. And that's also, interestingly, part of their argument, that is the reason why we now want to relieve you of the tax burden. That, okay, you only have to now deal with the cost of finance. However, they have also said that one of the things they are also saying is that in the proposal, according to the explanation of the chairman, is that they also want, so as it stands now, businesses that do 25 million and below are completely exempted from all kinds of taxes. If you do between 25 million and 100 million, you'll be paying 20% on your taxable profit. Then if you do anything above 100 million, you'll be doing 30%. So they are saying that those category of people that are currently doing 30%, they are also proposing that the rate will drop to 25, and then maybe in about 3 years, it will drop to 15%. It's some of the work, because we also have to state the fact we have a revenue issue. We have a major revenue crisis. Even after all the twists and turns, I think the highest we got was maybe around 2021 when it was about 10.8% tax to GDP ratio, which is still quite low. It was even from the last administration that they said they have a mandate to almost double it. The goal is that our tax to GDP ratio should be at least 18%. 18%. But what we have now is still about 10.6%, which means a whole lot of people are still not within the tax line. And that's some of the things that, some of us in practice have recommended, that rather than, indefinitely increasing the existing rate or always having to introduce new policies and new taxes, if you can consolidate on the existing data, get more people within the tax, within the tax line, and also introduce some efficiency in the collection system, some efficiency and transparency in the system, we can almost double what we are, currently collecting in revenue. So if they do all of that, they may not even need to, because as it stands, it looks as if it's the good people that are getting punished for being good. People within the tax nets, get to be punished more and more, and then there are people who are not doing anything at all. Yes. So it's an imbalanced system.
Well, talking about the imbalanced system and revenue generation, this policy is now about tightening this monetary policy and then VAT increment. Do you think it's like the right approach, and do you think it's going to help curb poverty as the minister stated?
Well, that is what they have stated. But on paper, I would say yes.
Okay.
But the problem with some of these policies, a lot of times, is at the implementation stage.
Okay.
Let me give you a very practical example. So the other day, the president introduced zero-rated taxes and levies on food items that are imported, just to kind of cushion the effect of the food inflation that was at the time over 40%.
Yes.
But
we had a reaction to that, because that's
exactly what I'm saying.
By the time
spike, custom,
yes.
But even before the spike, by the time custom came out with their own implementation guideline, because it's always the case, is the administrator that will eventually issue the implementation guideline. So by the time they came up with the implementation guideline, by the time I read it, I just laughed. So they have, kind of tactically, you will discover that the people who should really enjoy that benefit, when you look at the conditions that they have to meet, it's almost as if those people will not be able to meet them. So at the end of the day, it's always like there's always a way that
going around in circles.
And at the end of the day, the people who are even supposed to enjoy the policy will not enjoy them. We've seen with Finance Act, many instances, many provisions in the Finance Act, FIRS will come and issue clarification. It always comes in the name of clarification or implementation guideline on some of the provision that, in our own view, is not always the correct, interpretation of, because like the Finance Act is one legislation that I followed from the beginning. I was at the National Assembly. I saw all the questions and all the issues that were raised.
Yes.
For instance, so I am not supposed to pay VAT or any kind of taxes if my business is doing 25 million and below.
Yes.
Now, the problem is that I have to file that on a platform called Tax Promax. So the problem is, when I throw in my number on Tax Promax, say this month, don't forget that this 25 million is an annual figure. So when I throw in, say this month I made 500,000. When I throw that figure there as my revenue, the system automatically compute my VAT. Even though I haven't made up to 25 million as at that point, the system automatically compute my VAT. And we are saying that anyone who has not made up to that should not even register for VAT in the first place. But when you go to FIRS, most FIRS, they will tell you, no, just come and register, just be in the system. And immediately you register, you have to be filing that return every week. And I have many instances of some of our clients who said, okay, we've been paying because when we put the numbers there, the system automatically computes how much we should pay. So ideally, at the end of the year, I should be able to go back to them and say, okay, at the end of the year, I ended up with 11 million turnover for the year, and I have deducted these taxes. The refund system is almost impossible. On paper it works, but I have not successfully carried out one. In fact, and I thought I was doing badly until I heard Mr. Oyedele himself, who had done over 20 years. And he said in his 20 years of private practice, he was only able to do one successful in 20 years, one successful reform. I said, okay, maybe I'm not doing too bad then.
Yeah, but looking at it now, okay, that means policies now are actually looking good on paper, like you mentioned.
Yeah, they are looking good on paper.
But now, implementation now has always been a challenge in this part of the world.
Correct.
So how now do this agency, that's FRCN, and then the FIRS, and then the Minister of Finance and Economy, how would they, like, come together and then to be able to follow all of this? Like, what are your suggestions to, having the implementation happen, and then, people trusting the system that, yes, when we do this, it's definitely going to stand on what they've already said is going to stand on?
We have so much trust in this committee. I particularly have so much trust. I believe so much because of the quality of people in that committee, particularly the chairman. And I think one of the things that they have done differently, I'm not their spokesperson, is that they have kind of tried to carry all the important stakeholders along. For instance, most of the areas where we even have multiplicity of taxations and all of that, when you look at it, they are mostly between the state and the local government. And so one of the things that I said they have cleverly done was to, from the onset, from day one, carry them along. Because at the end of the day, it is the state that has, they are proposing, for instance, that people that are doing 1.5 million in revenue should not in earning rather, should be exempted from personal income tax. But it's the state that has the final say on that. So the state will say, what are you talking about? You can't, you can't tell me what to do in my state. We saw that in Oyo recently, where the governor came and said, no, we can't implement this wage because not even the wage. When they said the autonomy of the government, and they came and said, no, Oyo, we have our own way of doing our thing and all of that. So I also envisage that all of that might play out in this particular instance. And also, realistically, let's be realistic. If you say that 60% of individuals, based on your data, and businesses that do between 50 million and below, that the people that do between 50 million and below account for about 60%. In all fairness to some poor states, if you really, can they really afford to exempt 60% of their people from paying those taxes? So these are places where they need to still fine-tune it. Because it means that you are going to be overtaxing the remaining 40%. And at the end of the day, the thing will trickle down and comes back. And that's why it looks as if with all the reforms, initiative and all of that, you don't see a lot of changes on the street. You will think that by now they will almost be giving us rice for free, but it's still not the case. It's still quite expensive.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. This is how much time will permit us to take on the today's edition of the program. Though there are still more questions that I would love to ask.
Tax questions never end.
Yeah, tax questions really never ends. Well, thank you so much for taking our time to join us on today's edition of the program. And then hopefully the policies and initiatives that has been set aside by the Ministry of Finance and the committee and the led administration by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going to yield to a better result where we wouldn't need our NIN to go get a bag of rice for 40,000 naira. My name is Samuel Udi, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.